Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be about something that I've seen you guys ask plenty of times on some of my previous vlogs, where I have mentioned, I've called it getting into my lioness mode or race prep, basically mentally preparing for race day. Lioness mode is something that me and my counselor, therapist, whatever you want to call her, have kind of come up with. But I figured I am headed to Shanghai this week for my first 400 of the season, open 400, sorry. So I figured now was the perfect time to answer those questions that you guys had, as far as what do I do to mentally prepare for a track meet. So let's get into it. Headed to Shanghai. It's my first 400 of the season. This is a race for me that, of all of my races of the season, I won't say it's the one that I get the most nervous about, but I get pretty nervous or anxious. And for me, I have learned that that's a feeling that never really goes away. But what I have learned to do is manage those feelings. And by managing those feelings, I then turn it into something or fuel to use towards or during my races. So where does that anxiousness, that nervousness comes from? You know, as you can imagine, any big thing or exciting thing that's happening in your life, the adrenaline, you're just nervous. You don't know what's coming, and that's the thing, it's the unknown. You know, you want to perform well. So, you know, like I said, it's the thing that never really goes away, but you learn how to manage it. So how do you manage it? The first thing I do, I've enlisted the help of a therapist, a sports therapist, sports psychologist, whatever you want to call it. Everyone doesn't necessarily have to go to a sports psychologist, but maybe there's someone who just specializes in mental training. So for the purposes of this video, we'll say a mental trainer. And what we do is we talk about the things that create, excuse me, sorry, I'm drinking a smoothie at the moment, but we talk about the things that create the anxiousness, you know? And then what we do is we talk about the things that I have control over, which to some extent, the way I feel, the way I perform, how I execute, what goes through my mind, that sort of thing. You know, when I walk out to the track, do I have control over the weather? No, but I have control over how my warm-up goes, how I execute my warm-up, how I execute my race plan. I don't have control over my competitors. I don't have control over the officials. What do I have control over? Identify those things. And then the process. A lot of times we get so overwhelmed by our goals because they're so big. And that's great. Your goals should be big and they should scare you. I know you've seen that plenty of times. However, you have to focus on the process before you get to the end goal. So I think I'm one of those people that I believe in setting goals. I know that some people feel like you shouldn't set goals because they can be limiting, or there's a ton of arguments out there. If you want me to talk more about that, that's another video. But I believe in setting goals. But after setting those goals, I then put them in a box, put them to the side, and I focus on the process. The process being my training, my track meets leading up to the nationals and the world championships, my mind training, that's the process. I focus on those things. And for me personally, I've found that when I focus on that, the end takes care of itself. So what's the process? Visualization. What's your race plan? What did you work on in practice? Each week that you go to compete, you're gonna be working on something different. So, you know, how are you gonna execute this part of your race better? Your form fell apart at this part of the race, so you know what? Let's focus on that. How are we gonna do that differently? All of the controllables. Another thing that I do, and I've talked about this before, is I speak to myself in a positive voice. I went through a phase in my career where I was very negative to myself, and I had a lot of self-doubt, and I realized that I was defeating myself before I even stepped out on the track. And even in some of my personal life, you know, this video, I want to take the time to say this, that while this is geared towards performance in sports, a lot of this stuff I apply to my everyday life as well. But I spoke to myself negatively, and I learned that I had to change my language and I had to speak to myself positively. So I do this thing called I ams. And what I do is I basically tell myself everything that I believe I am or that I would like to be. So y'all know I believe I'm beautiful. So I say I'm beautiful, I'm intelligent, I'm strong, I am a champion, I am forgiven, I am God's child. All of those things that self-affirmations, self-love, it's okay to love on yourself. And you know, if you don't start with yourself, then where else, you know? So that's another part of my process. And I also journal. Sometimes I write down how I feel in a race, how I feel in practice. I think it's important to kind of remember or go through the emotions that you have, whether it's practice, a track meet, whatever. I think it's important that whatever emotion that you go through, that you honor those emotions. And yeah, you give yourself time to honor those emotions, but then you move on from it and you learn from it and you move on to the next thing. I hope that made sense, because I know that was kind of like all over the place. But those are some of the things that I'm doing every day. It's not, I've mentioned before, it's not something that you do, you wake up the morning of the race and just think that you're gonna do all of these things and then you're all of a sudden mentally prepared. No, that stuff takes practice. And there's gonna be days that you fall short. There's gonna be days that you don't feel so great. You just keep doing those things and keep trying to remind yourself of all of those things in practice. And you know, I don't want to equate it to speaking to, like, say your pastor or your parents or your coach, whoever you have that relationship with. If it's a conversation that you have to regularly have, then have those conversations, but stay on top of that routine. That's the weeks and months prior. Moving into the night before, again, visualization is something that is important. By this point, I will have talked to my coach about what our race plan is for the next day. So that visualization now is very specific of what that race plan is. What am I doing the first 50, the first 100, 150, 200, like, it's very, very detailed, and I'm thinking about those things. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is when I have that plan and I have something to focus on, it eases that anxiousness that I feel. Because when you, again, when you have something to control and you have something that's tangible and you know that, okay, this is what I'm here to do, this is what I'm gonna go out and execute, versus you just kind of don't know, there's a different sense of security. Could be me personally, I don't know, but that's what I've learned about myself. When I have something to focus on, then I can kind of manage those nerves better. And my IMs is something that's very important the night before. I go to sleep saying my IMs. And what that does is you go into your subconscious in a positive mind state. Be mindful of the things that you read before you go to bed. I think that that's probably one of the best reasons why they tell us to, you know, read your Bible or read something positive before you go to bed. Be mindful of what you're taking into your subconscious, and that's the reason why I do my IMs before I go to bed, because I want to be talking to myself in a positive manner. Before I go into the day of, I do want to bring up this book. It's called The Mind Gym. I was actually given this book in college when I used to see the sports psychologist that was on campus at South Carolina, and he gave me this book. I wish I remembered the doctor's name, but he gave me this book. But anyway, there's some quotes at the end of each chapter, and each chapter kind of talks about how the same thing, managing the nerves, focusing on the process, positive thought, positive thinking, all of the above. And I've had this book since college, and I always go back to it from time to time. I have other books, but this is one that like I really like and I go back to. So there's tons of things out there that you can read. You don't have to have a mental trainer. Tons of self-help books out there, sports psychology books that you can read for yourself and gain a lot from. This book for me is one for sure. So moving on to the day of, the morning of, moment in the morning where I'm just still and I just meditate and pray. And again, I'm going over my race plan, the visualization. But this day is a little different. Even though I do those things, I visualize, I think about my race plan, I think positive thoughts. If I have a negative thought come to mind, I immediately switch it to a positive thought. But this day I don't spend, I want this to come out correctly because someone's gonna rip this to shreds. There is such a thing as over-focusing, and there is such a thing as you focus so hard on a thing because you don't want it to, you want it to go a certain way, you don't want it to go wrong, that you almost, it's almost like self-sabotage. So this is when I try to do what I call my positive distractions. And by positive distractions, it's my walk to go have a cup of coffee. It's my lunch with my teammates where we just don't talk about track. We don't talk about the race, because at that point, if you've done all the visualizations that you're supposed to do, you've done all of the races over in your mind, you've thought about all of those things, it should already be there. There's really not much that you can do that morning that's going to change what you've already done. You understand what I'm saying? So this is the day where it's a very fine line of how you focus, you know? Keeping the positive mindset. You're definitely know that something big is coming and you want to perform well, but there's a fine line of over-focusing and focusing just enough. This is also the time, or I should say more so when I go out to the track, this is the time where I talk about turning on my lioness mode. For me, I have found that some of my best races are the races where I pretty much just go into autopilot. It's like, I know what I have to do. Just go out there and have a blast. But that killer in me, she comes on. And that's the part where I've seen a couple of people mention, and I responded to a couple of you about this too, where it's hard that, you know, in track, there's a big mix where sometimes fans can get mixed in with us as we're warming up, and you know, people want to say hi and we want to say hi too, but when you're zeroed in on that thing that you're focused on, you can imagine how difficult that might be to, you know, be personable and be friendly, but you're zoned in on what you have to do. But zoning in like that takes a lot of energy because it's a lot of focus, and I think people don't realize how much energy goes into focusing on a thing. So that's why I say on race day, it's very important that you have those things that manages the nerves, keeps you at bay, so that when it's time for you to go to that place, you haven't exhausted yourself mentally, because that mental exhaustion will show in your performance as well. I hope I'm making sense. But yeah, that's in a nutshell, as much as I could, how I prepare for race day. Like I said, I felt like with my first 400 coming up here in a few days, this was the perfect time to kind of talk about some of the things that I go through. It's, you know, kind of therapeutic for myself to kind of go through, okay, these are the things that you need to be doing. Am I doing these things right now? I'm doing most of them. As I'm sitting here talking to you, there are a couple of things that I'm like, okay, when you shut the camera off, you need to go sit down and do this. And it really is sometimes just sitting still for 10 minutes and just visualizing, reading, talking to someone. But it's not the thing that you wake up Saturday morning and it just clicks. It's practice. I hope you found this helpful. As always, I love talking to you guys. This has been an incredible journey, and I'm happy to share it with you guys. You guys seem to be enjoying it. As usual, any comments or questions, leave them down below and I'll try my best to get to them. Make sure you check me out this weekend, cheer me on, and we will be back. I'll do my best to vlog as much as I can while I'm in Shanghai, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm feeling good, I'm excited, I'm pumped, but I really don't know how much vlogging I will be able to do, especially if I don't have help, because that lioness mode is gonna be real, y'all. So as usual, make sure you're subscribed, give me a thumbs up, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.